Chapter 14. Urban Planning. Tommy had been staying with Wilbur for nearly 3 weeks before he ended up having to explain his new living situation to Puffy. In all honesty, he was surprised she hadn't picked up on something being amiss sooner. Tommy didn't end up going back to his apartment to get his clothes, and while he was content to keep wearing Wilbur's old stuff, one day he came back from work to find a pile of new clothes in his own size sitting on his bed. It wasn't the ratty t-shirts and thin sweatshirts that had practically been his uniform. These new clothes were high quality, brightly colored, and had 100% been picked out by Wilbur, since they all looked like they belonged on a Pinterest board. So Tommy's style change alone should have been enough for Puffy to realize something was up with him. But he hadn't gotten much chance to see her in the cafe as of late. She only stopped by for a few minutes at a time every few days, always with her mouth set in a thin line, and Tommy wondered what got her so worried. Puffy wasn't the only one who seemed off, though. Although Tommy and Foolish's conversations were limited to the few minutes they got to chat while they switched for their shifts, Tommy could tell that Foolish was tired. There were bags under his eyes, and the gold streaks in his hair seemed duller than they used to be. And yet, in complete contrast, his smile was brighter than Tommy had seen it in years. His friend Errett was always waiting for him to get off work, and Foolish would beam at them before waving goodbye to Tommy, slinging an arm over his friend's shoulders and guiding them out of the cafe with the kind of ease that only came with knowing someone for years on end. It was a strange situation. Foolish was clearly exhausted, but he was happy about it. Puffy was worried about something, but was trying not to let it show. It made Tommy wonder what was going on in their house, although he knew that wasn't any of his business, and didn't pry. But still, when he saw the frown lines creasing Puffy's forehead as she waved at him when he came in for his shift, he couldn't help but try to figure out a way to ask her what was going on, without being too nosy about it. "Sup, Puff?" Tommy said as he approached her table in the far back corner, squinting at the bright sunlight that was glowing against her curls. "Hi, Tommy. We haven't had a chance to chat in a while," Puffy said, smiling at him as he sat down across from her. "Which is totally my fault, by the way. I've been so swamped with other work stuff that I haven't been checking on the cafe as much as I want to." "You're fine, Puffy. Not much has been happening with me," Tommy told her, leaning back in his chair and trying not to think of how he'd had to scrub the back room floor for nearly an hour last week when Rosethorn bled all over it. "Really?" Puffy asked, raising an eyebrow at him. "Nothing new at all? Because you've been wearing a lot of new clothes lately, and you look like you put on some weight, meaning you've finally gotten a healthy eating schedule." Frowning, Tommy shrunk down in his seat. He might as well come clean about it. It's not like he was trying to hide it from Puffy or anything. "Well, to be honest, I got into a fight with Tubbo and Ranboo, so I've been staying at a friend's place for the past few weeks," Tommy admitted. Puffy blinked a few times in surprise. "Wait, you're not living with Tubbo and Ranboo anymore?" "Not like as a permanent thing. Just till we can figure out our shit." Tommy shrugged, turning his head to look out the window and not at Puffy's concerned face. "Did they kick you out?" Tommy shook his head. "No, of course not. I left on my own. Need some time to figure out how I feel about everything, you know?" He knew where this was going. Puffy was going to get worried, and then she was going to start doing her therapy thing to him, and while he appreciated her trying to help, he really didn't need it right now. "And you're staying at a safe place?" Puffy asked. "Yeah, I'm staying at my friend Will's. He's a really good guy," Tommy told her. "He and his dad Phil and his brother Techno have all been super nice about letting me stay for as long as I need." "Wait, do you mean the Soots? Wilbur, Phil, and Technoblade?" Puffy asked, furrowing her brows. "You know them?" At confirmation, Puffy immediately relaxed, her shoulders dropping as she leaned back in her chair. "Yeah, Phil and I are old friends. I'm glad you're staying with them. They're a good family." Something in Tommy's chest warmed at hearing how positively Puffy thought of the Soots. Of course he knew how good they were, but it was nice to know Puffy liked them too. "They really are," Tommy grinned. Well, I feel a lot better knowing you're being taken care of by them. Puffy laughed, looking far more relaxed than she had a moment ago. I think you should ask about having them drive you home from the closing shift, though. I don't think Techno would mind. I mean, Techno already drives me home sometimes, and a lot of times if he doesn't do it, then Wilbur will walk back with me, Tommy said, frowning a bit. But why do you say that? It's honestly quicker to get to the subway from here than it is to walk back to my apartment. I've just noticed an uptick in hero-villain sightings in this area, Puffy told him, her smile falling again. Like less than 2 months ago, Dream was seen fighting 2 vigilantes on top of this cafe, and you know Dream doesn't normally patrol in this area. Oh yeah. The night Dream fought Tubbo and Ronbu, just a little over a few weeks before he found out Tubbo and Ronbu were Nuke and Ender. While he'd been more distracted by Tubbo's anger towards him at the time, in retrospect, it was pretty weird that Dream had been there at all. Do you, think there's any reason he was out here? Tommy stammered, mind racing at the implications that could have regarding the syndicate. I'm not sure, but I think it's because of the increased villain activity in the area, Puffy said, casually, tapping the side of her cup. Tommy stiffened. Oh, really? I hadn't noticed. Puffy raised an eyebrow. Really? I feel like I'm getting an alert on my phone every few days that someone saw Daedalus or Nemesis or hell even Siren in Eastside. Do you think we need to be worried? Tommy asked, trying to force himself to relax his shoulders. Nah, I wouldn't say we have much to worry about. I doubt villains are going to be coming after this cafe, Puffy said, giving Tommy a strange look that he couldn't decipher. Besides, I think villains get a bit of a bad rap anyway. Tommy tried not to clench his jaw. What do you mean by that? Most of them aren't as volatile or unpredictable as the media makes them seem. They have reasons for doing what they do. We just don't know what those reasons are. Then, Puffy snorted. Anyway, it's not like the heroes haven't pulled the same shit. They're just allowed to get away with it. Holy shit. Holy shit. Puffy had the same views as he did on villains. She understood how unfair the whole damn system was. Finally, someone else outside of this whole mess who got it. You know, Tommy started, keeping his voice level. Not a lot of people would agree with you on that. Glancing up from her cup, Puffy smiled. But I have a feeling you do. Tommy wasn't sure what to make of that. Puffy could have just meant that as a compliment, trying to tell him she knew he was an understanding person, but there could have been another layer as well. There was no way Puffy knew about his business with the syndicate. If she'd found out, she would have confronted him by now, since he was literally using her back room as a makeshift clinic. Even if she didn't mind villains, he had to imagine she would have at least minded the blood. No, there was no way Puffy knew. He was just reading way too much into things. That seemed to mark the end of their conversation. Puffy told Tommy she needed to head out, and walked up to the counter where Foolish was in the middle of making another drink. The two of them had a quiet conversation, and then Foolish was handing his apron to Tommy to switch shifts. Once Tommy was settled behind the counter, he watched as Puffy guided Foolish out of the cafe, reaching a hand out to grab Eret, who had been waiting by the door but seemed surprised at Puffy's being there, and dragged them along with. The start of the shift was slow. There was the usual lack of a late afternoon rush, and the only thing of note was that Tommy was finally allowed to open the bottle of pumpkin spice Puffy kept under the counter since fall was almost here. He made a few pumpkin-based drinks, soaking in the scent of cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg, all while the golden light of the setting sun faded to something more akin to burnt orange. It was when the sun was little more than a red line on the horizon that two new customers walked into the cafe. It was two men, both looking as if they were in their early 20s. One of them had dark brown hair and even darker eyes, while the other was dirty blonde and kept his head down. "Welcome to the Cloudy Cafe. What can I get you?" Tommy asked, forcing his customer service smile on. Hi, can I get, What do you want? The brown-haired man said, nudging his friend with his elbow. I don't know. Something without caffeine. The blonde replied with a shrug. We're at a coffee shop, and you're not even going to get something with caffeine? The brunette scoffed. Hey, I'm sure they have plenty of other drinks here that don't have caffeine in them. The blonde snapped. The brunette sighed deeply, before looking back at Tommy. Sorry about him. He's an idiot. What do you have that doesn't have caffeine? We have herbal tea. Or hot chocolate, Tommy suggested. Hot chocolate is good, the blonde said. Okay, great. We'll have one small hot chocolate and a medium vanilla latte, the brunette ordered. Nodding, Tommy typed the drinks into the register. Oh, by the way, does this cafe connect to the alley that opens up on Lemon Street? The blonde suddenly asked, as Tommy was preparing to ring them up, lifting his head so he wasn't staring at the ground anymore. That was a random question. Yeah? The blonde nodded, his green eyes darting around the cafe at surprising speed. Alright. Sorry if that seemed weird. We were just walking on Lemon, and I noticed that the alley is longer than it should be, and I wondered if it connected with the adjacent street. He's studying urban planning, so he notices pointless shit like no one else ever will, the brunette said, smirking as he patted his friend's shoulder. I just thought it was a weird city layout, the blonde protested. Tommy resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Yeah, alright then. Anyway, what name do you want for the drinks? The two men shared a look before the brunette answered. George. Nodding, Tommy wrote the name down on both cups, and George handed over the money. Then he set about making the two drinks, glancing at the two new customers every once in a while. There was something up with them. The blonde one kept shifting his eyes and hunching over on himself, as if he was afraid of someone recognizing him. While Tommy thought the question about the back alley was weird, if the guy really was into urban planning, he supposed it would make sense. Either way, it wasn't his problem. If two random customers wanted to ask him about the layout of the back alley, that was their deal, not his. Once Tommy called out the name for the drinks, the two men came to grab their cups. George left with a casual wave, but the blonde was slower to follow. See you later, he said, giving Tommy a strange look before walking out the door George held open for him. Weird-ass customer. Shrugging it off, Tommy quickly turned to the new customer at his register and didn't think about the blonde and brunette men for the rest of his shift. Things slowed down after that. The rest of the evening faded along with the rest of the daylight into a relaxed atmosphere of a few customers typing on laptops, with one or two people murmuring softly to one another. Hours passed, and during an off moment, Tommy texted Wilbur if he wanted to come to the cafe at the end of his shift so they could get food on the way back to the house. When he checked his phone again half an hour later, he was surprised to see Wilbur hadn't responded. Huh. Usually, Wilbur responded almost instantly to any text he sent. Shaking his head, Tommy watched as the rest of the customers trickled out like sand in an hourglass. Luckily for him, the shop emptied out early, so he went through the familiar cleaning routine much sooner than he usually would, checking his Discord to see if he was going to be visited by any villains tonight. Right as he took his phone out to check, he heard the distinctive Discord ringtone and held the phone up to his ear. Hello? Hey, Tommy. It was Blade, and he sounded out of breath. Is the cafe closed yet? Technically no, but everyone's already left, so I was closing early anyway, Tommy explained, eyeing the empty street through the front windows. You need to stop by? It's not for me. It's for... Blade's voice was suddenly cut off as someone else grabbed the phone. I don't need healing, I'm fine. It was Siren, and his voice was tight with pain. Tommy resisted the urge to roll his eyes. What happened? I just got lightly scratched. He just about cut his foot off. Don't be so dramatic. It's fine, all I need is some bandages. Siren, stop being a fucking idiot and get your ass over here, Tommy said into the phone. Blade, carry him if you have to. Hey, that's not fair. You can't just tell Blade to... There was a muffled shout as the phone was grabbed again. We'll be there in 5 minutes, Blade told him. And with that, the call cut off, and Tommy sighed as he shoved his phone in his pocket. Time to go prepare the back room. A few minutes later, Tommy found himself leaning against the wall of the back room, towels laid out and first aid kit ready to be used if it was necessary. He tapped his fingers on his thigh, scrolling through Twitter absent-mindedly as he waited for a knock at the door. Checking his texts again, he noticed that Wilbur still hadn't replied. He must have been busy with work or something. Tommy could probably ask him about it when he got back to the house. Either way, it was a good thing now that Wilbur hadn't replied, considering he was now going to have to take care of an injured siren. In the back of his head, he could hear Tubbo and Ronbu's voices as he thought about how strange it was that Wilbur hadn't replied, while Siren needed healing. We kind of thought that Wilbur was Siren. But that was ridiculous. Wilbur was just busy with work. It was a coincidence and nothing more. That was what he told himself, as there was a knock at the door, and Tommy shoved his thoughts to the back of his head as he pushed to his feet to swing it open. As expected, it was Blade and Siren. Siren had his arms slung around Blade's shoulders, and his left leg was lifted slightly off the ground, with blood dripping on the asphalt. Tommy stepped out of the doorway and gestured for Blade to bring Siren into the room, and Siren cursed as he sat down on the towels. Tommy, you don't need to go through the trouble of healing me, Siren argued as Tommy knelt down to inspect the leg. The fabric of his jeans was ripped at the calf, taking a large chunk of his leg with it. It wasn't anything life-threatening, or even could cause permanent damage since it was just the fleshy part of his calf. But it had to be painful as hell, not to mention it was gushing blood. Grabbing some gauze, Tommy immediately pressed it to the wound, ignoring Siren's hiss of pain at the pressure. It only took seconds for the gauze square to be soaked, so Tommy grabbed a few more and added them to his fistful. Don't be so dramatic. The last thing I want to do is find you in a dark alleyway passed out from blood loss again, Tommy shot back, rolling his eyes. Besides, this thing has to hurt like a bitch. Did Dream chop a piece of your damn leg off or something? Siren snorted. Actually, it was Rewind who did this. I don't think he meant to. While I'm not clear on exactly what happened, I think he was trying to use his time powers to rewind and grab me, but he misjudged the timing. And instead of blocking my leg so I tripped, he accidentally put a pipe through my leg. Tommy almost dropped the gauze he was holding. What the fuck? How does that even happen? I'm not sure. But 1 second I was fine, and the next I had a literal pipe going through my calf. And not like I'd been stabbed, but as if it had been embedded there. Like when you glitch through a wall in a video game or something. And did you just end up ripping it out? Tommy asked, shoving down the nausea that rose in his throat at that description. Yeah, I did. Even though that probably wasn't the smartest thing. Again, I don't think Rewind did it on purpose. Because the second he saw me screaming about the pipe in my leg, he started panicking right with me. Siren explained, tilting his head up to the ceiling. Didn't apologize, though. Bastard. Good thing Dream wasn't there. I think he would have just laughed. Blade snorted. Oh, he would have gotten such a kick out of that. Siren huffed, smirking to himself. I haven't seen him recently, though, have you? Blade shook his head. No, I haven't. He's been less active for the past few weeks, which is odd for him. Frowning, Tommy glanced up at the two villains through his hair. Dream's been quiet? Yeah. We haven't been seeing him nearly as much as we were a few weeks ago, Siren explained, his lips twisting with a frown. Even stranger, I've heard reports that he's been spotted in Eastside. Not looking to fight someone, just sneaking around, like he's doing espionage or some shit. Tommy suppressed a shiver from running down his spine. What the hell could he want in Eastside? I'm not sure, Blade murmured, although Tommy could see through the eye holes in his boar mask that he was staring at him directly. I have my theories, but I want to wait until I get more evidence before bringing it up to the others. Yeah, that sounds reasonable, Tommy muttered, tilting his head back down to look at the wound again. Anyway, Siren, you ready? Siren groaned. You can just bandage me up, it's fine. Shut up, bitch, I'll heal what I want, Tommy said. And before Siren could protest again, orange light started to shine from Tommy's hands, and both of them went silent as Tommy's healing powers went into effect. It was a nasty wound, but it didn't hit anything important. After a few beats of silence, Tommy's head was pounding considerably, and pins and needles were shooting up his hands, but otherwise he was all right. Sighing, Tommy let go, and he didn't even need to say anything before Blade was shoving a glass of water in his hands. Thanks, Tommy muttered, taking a long sip of the drink. After waiting for the lights to stop dancing behind his eyes, Tommy leaned back over to check on the leg, and was pleased to see it had almost completely sealed itself over. The patch of skin that hadn't been there before Tommy healed it was a much paler shade than the rest of the leg, but otherwise the scar didn't seem all that bad. While Tommy was looking at the leg, though, he felt a hand reach over and ruffle his hair. You didn't need to do that, Siren said quietly, guilt dripping from his tone. Sighing, Tommy shoved the hand away from his head and straightened back up. Why are you so upset? This is literally my job. I guess I'm worried about you burning yourself out, Siren admitted. Tommy resisted the urge to flip him off. I'm fine, seriously. I've been staying at my friend's place for a while now, and things are really good because of it. I'm not gonna burn out. You sure? Tommy nodded, and Siren hummed. Is this the same place I dropped you off a little while ago? What was his name? William? Wilbur, Tommy corrected, missing the pointed look Blade shot Siren. I've been staying at Wilbur's place with him and his family. And you like it there? They're all good to you? Siren pushed, and even through the blindfold, Tommy could feel his intense stare. Siren, don't push him for personal information. Blade stepped in, the warning obvious in his tone. He doesn't have to answer me if he doesn't want to, Siren snapped back. Blade, I appreciate it, but it's fine, Tommy reassured the man, taking another sip of his water. It's not like he minded talking about how kind the Soots were, and hopefully knowing how great the Soots were being would make Siren feel less guilty about letting him do his job. Yeah, they're all really good to me. Phil, Wilbur's dad, he's a really cool guy. He's super easy to talk to, and he makes really good tea, too. I'm not nervous around him, like I am with most parents, so that's pretty pog. Then there's Techno, Will's brother. He's super cool, and tries to act all gruff, but he's actually really caring. He'll offer to drive me home from work a lot, or make me food without me having to ask for it, just stuff like that. Blade had his arms folded over his chest, and was staring at the wall while Tommy spoke. Meanwhile, Siren seemed enraptured by what he was saying. Go on, he encouraged, with a small smile. Leaning further back against the wall, Tommy grinned. And Wilbur's just fucking fantastic. He's my best friend, even if that's a bit weird to say since he's in his 20s and I'm a teenager. But that's just 'cause he's kind of a loser. Tommy joked, missing the way Siren pouted at this. But honestly, it's not that weird, I guess, because... Well, this is kind of stupid of me to say since it's just a joke between us, but I kind of think of him as an older brother. His cheeks flushed as he admitted it out loud, even though he'd been thinking that for weeks now. I don't know, it's kind of stupid. No, it's not stupid. Siren cut him off. His voice was strangely tight, as if he was holding back tears. It's not stupid at all. I think, Wilbur would be really happy to know that. Tommy ducked his head. I don't think I need to tell him. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Why would it be embarrassing? You guys are obviously really close friends. I think he'd appreciate hearing... Siren. Blade suddenly snapped, cutting him off. Your leg should be good by now, so I think it's time for us to go. Tommy frowned, confused by the Blade's change in demeanor. He didn't understand why he seemed so upset about the conversation that was going on, but something had changed the minute Siren started asking him about his personal life. Siren pouted at Blade. Oh, come on, let me give Tommy advice. You're not the right person to be giving him that kind of advice. Blade shot back, pushing to his feet and holding a hand out for Siren. Although Siren seemed reluctant, he took the hand and grunted as Blade pulled him upright. Then, Blade offered Tommy the same hand, which he took gratefully as the villain helped him up. Thanks for the help, Tommy. Well, get out of your hair now, Blade said, patting his shoulder before turning for the door. Siren, meanwhile, lingered. I hope you know, I don't mean to come off as pushy, Siren told him, running his hands through his hair. I just kept worried and want to make sure you're in a good place, you know? Don't worry, Big S, I get it. But I promise I'm in a good place. Really. Nodding, Siren smiled at him. All right, I trust you. Just make sure you get some rest. Snorting, Tommy rolled his eyes. Okay, Mum. I'll make sure to go to bed early. Siren huffed and followed Blade out the back door, giving Tommy one last wave before the door shut completely. Finally alone, Tommy's shoulders sagged as he rubbed his temples to try and ease the headache pounding behind his eyes. It wasn't a bad headache by any means, especially compared to what he'd dealt with before, but it wasn't pleasant either. Shaking his head, Tommy went through his now standard cleanup routine. Scrub down any blood that got on the floors, throw the towels in the wash, take out the trash so there wasn't any bloody gauze in there, stuff like that. Once the back room looked presentable, Tommy then headed back out to the front of the shop and slung his backpack over his shoulder, ready to get on the subway so he could head back to the house. Tommy didn't even make it out the front door when he got a call on his phone. Not his Discord, but his cell. Checking the screen, he saw it was Wilbur, and answered it immediately. Hey Will, what's up? Tommy asked as he held the phone up to his ear. Hi Toms, are you still at the cafe? Yeah, I was just about to head out. If you want, I can be there in 5 minutes and we can get dinner. I had a work thing nearby. Tommy's stomach growled at the mere mention of food. Sounds good to me. See you soon. The line clicked off as Wilbur hung up, and Tommy grinned as he leaned against the wall. He was starving, and getting food with Wilbur was going to be just the thing to cure his headache. Siren's encouragement was still echoing in his ears. Wilbur would be really happy to hear that. Would he? Tommy didn't want to come off as too clingy, especially not when Wilbur had already been kind enough to let Tommy basically move in without having to pay rent or anything. But Tommy also remembered what Phil had told him, early on in his stay at the Soots, about how Wilbur was the kind of person who needed verbal reassurance of his relationship with others. How even though he might seem confident, he actually had a lot of insecurity when it came to the people close to him. Maybe not. Tommy wasn't sure. Either way, he needed food first and foremost. Sure enough, 5 minutes after Wilbur's call, a familiar figure knocked on the door to the cafe. Hey, Gremlin. Wilbur grinned, hands shoved in his pockets as he leaned on one leg. Old bitch, Tommy shot back, stepping out of the cafe and twisting the key in the lock. Where are we going? I was thinking Bad's Diner. We haven't been there in a while, Wilbur told him, already turning to walk down the street. Can I get another muffin? Tommy asked, bouncing on the heels of his feet as he followed Wilbur. Wilbur chuckled. Of course. Just make sure to get some real food, too. Tommy cheered as he hurried behind Wilbur, already daydreaming of which muffin flavor he was going to get. Then, his steps faltered, and he whipped his head to the other side of the street. What's wrong? Wilbur asked, pausing mid-stride. Furrowing his brows, Tommy's eyes scanned the rooftops. He could feel eyes watching him again, prickling the back of his neck and practically boring a hole into his skull. He had to suppress the urge to shudder. Nothing, He paused again, narrowing his eyes, but not being able to make anything out in the shadows. Just feel like we're being watched. Wilbur frowned, whipping his head in the direction Tommy was staring. By who? I don't know, but I feel like someone's staring at me, Tommy admitted, When he still couldn't see anything across the street, he sighed and shook his head. Probably just my imagination. I'm getting paranoid. No, you're not being paranoid. Now that you mention it, I feel it too, Wilbur said, watching the rooftops with the same intensity. There was a beat of silence as they waited for something to happen, someone to appear. The orange streetlights buzzed above their heads with the faint hum of electricity. Other than that, everything was silent. Finally, Wilbur sighed and turned away. I think you should stop walking alone at night, Wilbur said, throwing an arm over Tommy's shoulders and pulling him close as they started walking again. From now on, I want you to call me or Techno so one of us can take you home. Tommy ignored the way Wilbur said take you home, as if it was just as much his home as it was theirs, and instead focused on the other part of that sentence. I'm not a damn baby, Will. I can walk to the subway station by myself, Tommy argued. It's not that I don't trust you. It's that I don't trust this part of town, Wilbur explained, pulling Tommy along while still eyeing the opposite side of the street, although the feeling of being watched had faded. Wow, you know I technically still live down here, right? Tommy huffed. Don't need to be so judgmental. Pausing in his steps, Wilbur turned so both his hands were on Tommy's shoulders, and he leaned down to meet his eyes. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I'm worried about you, because we were just being watched by someone we couldn't see. Tommy rolled his eyes. You're so overprotective. I promise I'm fine. Wilbur sighed. Please let me act like your overprotective older brother. I'd rather you get annoyed at me for that than wind up getting hurt. Older brother. Tommy froze at the words, thinking of how Wilbur put a voice to exactly what he had admitted to Siren less than half an hour ago. You think of yourself as my older brother? Tommy asked, blinking at him. The worry faded from Wilbur's eyes at that, replaced by something soft instead. Yeah, I do. Warmth filled Tommy's chest. That's cool. Me too. I mean, like, I think of you as a brother too. Don't say that, I will cry, Wilbur joked. But now do you understand why I'm so worried about you? Sighing, Tommy nodded. Yeah, but I still think having you or Techno walk me home every night is overboard. In truth, the last thing he wanted was for Wilbur or Techno to show up unexpectedly when he had a villain bleeding out on his backroom floor. What if I just call you guys to come get me if I notice anything suspicious? Wilbur frowned. But you might not notice anything weird. I mean, I noticed someone staring tonight, didn't I? Tommy asked. Besides, you guys are working a lot, and I don't want you to have to take time to come get me unless you really need to. I'd rather miss out on work than have you potentially be in a dangerous situation. Wilbur pushed. Tommy met his gaze with a flat stare of his own, trying to show Wilbur that he wasn't going to back down on this. There were a few more beats of silence. Then, Wilbur sighed and shook his head. Fine, if you promise to call me the second you notice something suspicious, we can make that a deal. Wilbur relented. But you need to promise that if you have any kind of bad feeling, anything at all, you'll lock yourself inside the cafe and come call us. Tommy thought Wilbur was being a little overdramatic, but he nodded anyway. Yeah, fine, I promise. Shoulders dropping in relief, Wilbur nodded before pulling Tommy in for a hug. Your older brother instincts are already annoying, Tommy joked, although he leaned in to rest his forehead on Wilbur's shoulder. Shut up, Kremlin, Wilbur grumbled, squeezing him tightly. The hug lasted a few more moments, Tommy basking in how warm he felt despite the chilly fall air. Then there was a loud gurgling noise from his stomach, and he flushed red as Wilbur laughed. Oh no, the poor child is starving, Wilbur exclaimed, letting go of the hug to grin at him. Fuck off, of course I'm hungry. I just got off work, Tommy shot back, frowning at Wilbur. Let's go get the starving baby some sustenance, Wilbur teased, ruffling Tommy's hair as he resumed walking down the sidewalk. You're such a prick, I'm not a baby. My little baby brother. Shut up, you old bitch. The two continued to shout, all the way to Bad's diner, ignoring the eyes still watching them from afar.